Hey everybody, I'm Tommy. What's really going on around here? Jennifer Folsom, how you doing? Bacon Bits, long time no see, man. It's been weeks. Jason P, how are you? I'm kidding, people. I just saw him. Brazy Girl, what's up? Dr. Ducky? Dr. Ducky 143, welcome to the Lifeboat. Brazy, it's always an honor. Don Meredith, good to have you. Jennifer Folsom, what's happening? Shannon Smith, glad you're here. Hey, Kestrel. Even if more than possible, that's so kind. Marion Calabro, good to see you. Jason KM, give a flash. A nice pat on the back for me. Says Jason P. Krista Melinda, glad you're here. And you give Flash a nice pat on the back for me too. Lisa from Jersey, good to see you. Hello, L. Bowman. Hello, Sarah Bowman. Scooby, you should have had a Bowman last name. We could have kept it going. Susie Q. Blame Aaron. Okay. Susie Q, good to see you. Jennifer Folsom, how are you? Good. Kim is Blue, glad you're here. Layla, things are good, Layla. If they were doing any better, well, they couldn't be doing any better, honestly. I'm having a really good time right now. My body is in decent shape. I swam today. Hello, Meredith Lynn. Hey, Matt. I'm glad you're here. Jamie Palmer. Taekwondo. Good to see you again. Long time no see. Just left us. My other's keeper. Glad you're here. I had a feeling Flash was probably the doggy. If you had named your son Flash, I mean, it is what it is, but I would have been surprised. Elizabeth Grundy is here. Kathleen. Just missed the replay. Wow. I didn't think anybody missed that. We got off that, and that was the largest audience we've ever had. And I don't mean what you could see. I mean, when we got to the end of it, 4,000 people had seen that. So that's pretty impressive stuff. Hey, Chow Yun Smut, good to see you. What's happening, Cricket? My pain today is at a 2. How's that? At a 2. I have lived probably the last couple of decades with it at 3 or more. So this is as low as I can remember it. Baby steps, glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for being me. Well, you know what? Thanks. I appreciate that. I'm going to stick that way. It's the only me that has worked out, and I'm not being funny. I've tried a few other me's, right? I really have. And we're going to go over some of them today because I'm going to be talking about some stuff from my past. And I think this ties into a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, right? Today we're going to talk about the cult of greed, and this is something that the reason that I got off the rails as bad as I did was because of my ability to make money in crappy ways. It's, hey, Moose, come up here. The little guy's going to make an appearance. Come here. Come on, bud. Look at this. Look who we got. It's Moose. He's a rock star, and he's very content to sit in my lap. He'll probably do the whole show here. He is the most affectionate kitty. He would just like to be here. I'll let you see here for a second. He just wants to chill out and grind his head into you. He would be really content to just sit like this for the entire show, and I'll probably let him. He's a lot of fun to have on your lap. So, hey, Florence, how are you? Yeah, Moose is he's the coolest cat ever. He is so laid back. He really is just a very laid back pussycat, and probably hang with me for the show as long as I give him a little behind the ear action, little, yeah, the circus. On our last show, we started out with with Gertie deciding she wanted to attack Moose. Normally they get along pretty well. She gets a little possessive over the bed, but it's funny. All of the cats and dogs were in harmony earlier. They do really well together. Your cat Wilson is with you right now? Cool. You know what? Life is better with a kitty cat in your lap or your arms, I promise. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief history because we talk a lot about my crime, but I started committing crimes of a different nature long before, until I got blackballed in the business opportunity industry. I made my living selling greed. I made my living selling the promise that you could make money, right? And I did it in a lot of ways. I have Spanky pulling up infomercial footage from a couple of the infomercials that I did. That we're going to show you. Hello, Marilyn Honig. Good to see you. We're going to show you some of the stuff that I did, the actual videos of me ripping people off. Marilyn, my understanding is Marilyn is over a month without nicotine, and I am so impressed with that. I cannot begin to tell you. It is a very, very difficult thing to do. especially because of the delivery method. When we breathe in nicotine, it delivers so quickly a doubling of the dopamine levels that it is one of the most difficult drugs on planet Earth to quit. So very, very impressive, Merlin. And I heard you say on the channel that we played a part, and I am on your channel. And boy, it makes me feel fantastic that that the Lifeboat had a part in that. Trish Ryan, good to see you. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm proud of you, Marilyn. I really am. It was great to hear that on your channel the other day. Settle down, Moose. What are we doing? Moose is changing up the lighting scenario. He didn't like the way that light was working. He's a bit of an opinionated kitty. Still trying to reduce my Xanax and Ambien to sleep. You know what, Jennifer? The thing with Xanax is you want to reduce that very, very slowly, and you want to talk to a doctor before you do it. You will never hear me tell somebody how to get off Xanax. You will never hear me tell someone how to get off alcohol. I'm not a doctor. In both of those situations, you need the professional help of a doctor because of the threat of death. I can't play this up more than it. You're in deep trouble if you quit cold turkey from benzodiazepines, things like Xanax, Valium, or if you quit cold turkey from alcohol, it can absolutely kill you. So it's really important that you consult a medical professional before you go down that road, please. Catalina, glad you're here. Sir Tedrick Walker, glad you're here. Hello, Kathy. Hey, I am still hitting a vape. I am really struggling to quit. I'm doing it as less, the smallest amount I've ever done it in my life, I promise you. But it's a difficult substance to get off. It really is a tough substance to get off. And it's not the habit, it's not the ritual. For me, it's cut and dry. I can go from my base level, whatever we want, affix a number to it. You have a base level of 10. Right? That's your dopamine level. All of a sudden you go to a base level of 20. That is very relaxing. And it makes most of the stuff around you seem a lot easier to deal with. Harm reduction. For me, I'm very happy that I'm not lighting anything on fire to breathe into my lungs. But Lisa from Jersey says, I'm down to 1/2 of a 2.25 milligrams Xanax a night. I still need my Ambien though. You know what? As long as you're not, be careful. And again, you got to talk to a doctor. But why you got to be really careful with these substances is if you're taking Ambien and you're taking Xanax, both of those are respiratory depressants. They're going to relax your breathing process, your respiration. And if you look at how respiration works, I'm not a doctor, right? But we all probably saw experiments in high school, or if you ever made a gravity bong in college, right? You have a diaphragm, which is just a muscle that is a membrane that pulls down. And when it pulls down, that's what inflates your lungs, right? That gets really relaxed. And it gets relaxed to the point where you can stop breathing, not on Ambien and Xanax alone, right? But if you're taking large amounts of both of them, and then you add alcohol, which is not only a third respiratory depressant, but it's one that exacerbates the other two with a math equation that they say 1 + 1 = 3. If you take a Xanax and you take a beer, it's not the equivalent of a 1 + 1 = 2. It really amplifies both drugs and it makes it a lot more dangerous. You got to be very careful quitting that stuff. Catalina, you look great in green. You really do. And you know what? A member for a 1.5 years, my brother Nick. He says, I love you all. Keep fighting the good fight. I am the noise opera. Nick is just a great guy. Susie Q says, Tommy, ADHD makes dopamine low. It absolutely does. And it makes it low. It's different in every person. Some people with ADHD have massively low dopamine levels. It just depends. But again, this is why it is so important to not try to treat yourself with this crap. We're not smart enough, I promise you. And neither are the doctors. So what I mean by that is it takes a real symbiotic relationship between doctor and patient. And in a perfect world, doctor, patient, and therapist, so that everybody works together on these issues. And it works a lot better. I promise you. I promise you. Hey, Rick Spicer, good to see you. I'm glad that you're here. It really is important stuff with the Xanax. I'm at 2 1 milligram tabs a night, but I have been off it for 9 years since my dad took his life. But I know I need to back off. Jennifer B., please talk to a doctor. And here's what we tell everybody. We're one of the only places that we're completely cool, right? If people come here and they are continuing to use substances, we're a channel that wants everybody around, right? If you're still drinking and getting high, we want you here. It's not very often sobriety channels kick people off who happen to be doing drugs or alcohol, which is the equivalent of an oncologist saying to somebody, why did you show up here, man? You have cancer, right? A sobriety channel should invite people who are still using. And we should all remember the fact that we were using until whatever, 4 months ago, 30 days ago, 42 days ago, 9 years and 2 days ago. I don't forget those days, right? And I hope nobody else does. But what we used to say back in the beginning was, hey, if you're still using, when the time comes that you're ready to quit, we would all like to support you in that process. We'd like to hold your hand. We'd like to tell you some of the things that's worked for us. And we want to be there for you so that on days that you're struggling, you're just not alone and you know that you have support. Until you're ready to quit, we would just like to be here for you, to come up and surround you, right? And tell you what worked for us. And it's the same thing one way or the other. It really is. And so I'm glad that people are sharing the fact that they feel like they need to back off. It is a very open place here where you can talk about the fact that you're using. No one's ever going to do here, I promise. If they do, they'll disappear really quickly. That's the beautiful thing about running this gig. You can go like this with your finger, right? I can. Spanx Calhoun can. People want to come in and be jackasses. There are tons of channels you can go out and find sobriety at. Ours is a little different. And we're pretty proud of the fact that this really is like a family. You know, Nick's a great example. I love Nick, right? There's not much I wouldn't do for the cat. We really do become family around here. A combination of lurking on the lifeboat, listening to Alan Carr's book. Alan Carr's amazing. Easy way to quit smoking, and a lot of positive self-talk has really helped me. Multi-pronged approach. Go figure. People, you hear this? Multi-pronged approaches are how people get sober. It's also how people who don't need to get sober change their life. Because it doesn't matter if what you need to change has to do with drugs or has to do with anything else. It could have to do with greed. Now, getting back to, hold on one second. Hi, Tommy. I tried to just watch one live in the evening, so I didn't expect the hubs. I'll catch you on the replay. Excellent. Have a great night and give Reese and the fur babies a hug for me. I shall do that. And I think it's probably not a bad idea to restrict the amount of anything that you do. Honestly, I really do. I have been blessed by Reese. I really have. And I hope that I've blessed her a little. She most assuredly has blessed me. I promise you, she's a better friend than you could imagine. I mean that. So here's what happened to me, people. I had a drug habit from the time I was about 13. But by the time the drugs got into the heavier stuff, right? I needed to come up with a lot of money. And as I've talked about, a guy came up to me. This is no joke. Spanx's mom and I were doing drugs and not living a particularly great lifestyle. And she gave me $900 and said, you got to go give this to the landlord, right? We were renting a house, but it was kind of a own thing. And in the beginning, that looked great, but it wasn't working out very good at that point. And we were behind. And I said, this doesn't pay the rent, right? This isn't even half of the rent. And she said, right, but you got to go down and give this to her. And you tell her this excuse. And I met a guy on the way who pitched me on a network marketing deal. And the network marketing deal was how to surf the internet through your television. At this point in America, 7% of Americans were surfing the internet. I'm going to say that again. 7% of Americans had access to the internet. Today, nobody doesn't have access to the internet. Very different world, okay? But this guy sees me on the way and he says, you ever get online? I said, I have not. He said, I'd love to show you. It's really cool stuff. I said, well, I know what it is. Like, I understand the concept. He said, yeah, but I can do it through my TV. And it was a way to surf the internet through your television set. And it didn't require a bunch of knowledge or anything else. And everyone knew how to use the TV. And he explained to me that, for X amount of money, you can begin to enroll people who can go out and start AOL days. That's right. They can go out and start selling these boxes to surf the internet. You get a commission on them. And if you can enroll 20 people in the first week, you get $10,000 in cash as a commission and a $5,000 bonus. And from that point on, everybody that you sell, you make X amount of money. You locked yourself in this. You had to hit the top of the sales plan in the first 7 days, or you never got another chance. It was a very, very unusual pay plan for an MLM, a multi-level marketing company. I didn't know what multi-level marketing was. This just seemed like, wait a sec. So I can sell this crap and I can get it. I mean, I never had heard of it. So to me, this was, what a cool idea, right? And I thought, this is the coolest device ever. You have to understand that I had never sat down and typed in the word football into a search engine to see that there was 1.9 million websites out there. Now I would imagine it's hundreds of millions, right? But there was so much info out there, it was overwhelming. So I went back home and I had a bag that had one of these set-top boxes in it. And when I got to the house, my wife at the time said, did you go down and give her the money? And I said, no, I didn't. And I used to tell the story later because it becomes part of the lure of MLM, right? I said, no, but I bought these magic beans, because that was literally the look she gave me, right? I looked like Jack and the Beanstalk. I was like, nah, I didn't go do what I was supposed to do, but I got these beans and we're going to be rich. And if you sign up this many people, and she just looked at me and went, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, she was the voice of reason. She said, this is so stupid. I cannot believe that you did not pay the rent. Like, she just went completely nuts. But 47 hours later, I had made $15,000. And I never looked back from that standpoint. And I got to the point with that particular network marketing company where we were making about $20,000 a week, for real. Now, again, I don't know I'm ripping people off. At this point, I have no idea I'm ripping people off. All I know is that money is tumbling in. Now, I also knew that in order to get paid, I had to do $2,000 a month in personal sales. Now, I didn't have to do that selling set-top boxes. I could buy these energy or these, they had these two different products. One was made from fruit, one was made from vegetables. But you took a green pill in the morning, or 4 green pills, and that was all the vegetables you needed in the day. And you could take all it was just an over-the-counter. You could probably buy it anywhere, but they were private labeling it. I was buying $2,000 worth of this stuff a month to justify a $60,000 or $70,000 a month paycheck. But we would go out in the middle of the night and throw this stuff in dumpsters. For real. All this product still in boxes, just throwing it in dumpsters. We were buying our paycheck, which is part of how this whole thing works. But here's where it got insidious. If it was just this deal, the deal doesn't work out or whatever, you go back, you get a job. I made way over 6 figures doing this in a very short period of time, and money was tumbling in. And then we got to a point where we weren't making sales anymore. Like, I wasn't trying to sell anything. I was just making money off of all the people who I had recruited who were actually selling stuff, which resembles the dream, right? You go, holy crap, so it really works? Well, not exactly. See, I sold 5 people who were already working as public speakers. So they were going around the country doing their normal pitch. And at the end, they would go, hey, check out this set-top box. And they would enroll 25 or 35 people a day. So I was making so much money that without working, me and my partners were doing about $13,000 a week. So one day I had a OT8 visiting me. And well, now he's an OT8. At the time, he was just a Scientologist. But he and his wife were visiting and some other people. And he was in this deal with me. I was paying for him to stay at a hotel at a ski area because I had all the money in the world and I didn't care. So I said we came down and I said, you want to go out and try skiing? And he goes, yeah, I guess I could. He's like, I don't have equipment and all that. And I was like, don't worry about it. I took him down. I was like, style him out, give him everything he needs. Just put it on my, on my bill and I'll pay for it and blah, blah, blah. And I got a phone call from my partner at the time, whose name, we'll call him Jack. It's not the same Jack, but we'll call him Jack because that's about as close as his name was. But he called me on the phone and he said, hey man, we just got our check. And I said, cool. It was Friday. I said, how much is it? He goes, $1,360. And I go, that's right. That's right where it should be. I mean, 13,600. And he goes, bro, $13.60. And I go, hey, take a deep freaking breath, because he's panicking. I said, obviously they moved a decimal point, because the last check 7 days ago was 13,000. The one before that was 13,000. Why would this one be 13? They screwed up a decimal point. And he said, well, can you handle this? I said, I'll make the phone call. So I called the office, which was in California. And when the phone picked up, this is what I heard. No, I won't back down, right? A little Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. No, I won't back down. Come on in, Lady E. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. While that's going on, a guy who is a famous dirtbag who's been to prison a bunch of times. I didn't know this at the time. They used to call him Lompoc Larry because he did time at Lompoc Federal Correction Institution for ripping people off on a deal where he was selling them yogurt, right? It's called Culture Farms. And he was selling them yogurt and telling them that you put the yogurt in your windowsill and you let it turn into, they didn't know it was yogurt. It looked like a culture, but you let it mold for 6 to 8 months in a windowsill. And then you send it back to the company and they buy that stuff from you for some experiment. Trouble is, it was all BS. There was no company. They just knew that if they could keep selling this for 6 months, 8 months, they would make so much money that they could get out of Dodge. But we didn't know that. He had changed his name, all this stuff. But his voice came on and said, the Federal Trade Commission has shut us down, right? But we're not going to back down. Don't you worry about this. Our lawyers are over there. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Federal Trade Commission? So I called a friend who had helped enroll me in this. And he was a dyed-in-the-wool professional network marketer. He had done 10 of these deals. And he said, yeah, you need to come see me tonight. And I got together and I walked in the room and I went, what's up, man? What are we going to do? And he goes, well, we're going to go out to California tomorrow and see whether or not this thing can be fixed. We were also selling electricity because it had just been deregulated. And I walked into that office of this company in California, and I'm not exaggerating this much. It looked like the show Hoarders. You had to walk through paper, right? Stacked up 4 and 5 feet high. And I went in and I looked around and I went, what the hell is this? What am I looking at? And he goes, those are applications for the electric stuff. And I went, there's got to be millions of them. Like literally. And he goes, no, but there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them. And I go, my God, man, you're never going to get all these entered in a computer. And he goes, no, we're not. And I go, no, I'm being serious. He goes, so am I. We're done. Like this blew up. It got too big so quick. And it made the FTC take a look at them. And they found out that we were making all our money recruiting. No one was selling product. And you got to make at least a certain percentage of what you're bringing in by actually selling the product. You know, people call these pyramid schemes. That's not a pyramid scheme. A pyramid scheme is when you say, if you come in with $250, I put you on the bottom of the pyramid. Now you bring in 5 people with $250, you move to the next level. And as they start to bring people in, you move to the next level. And when you get to the top, all that cash is yours. That's called a pyramid scheme because there's no product. You're just bringing in money. And that's a pyramid. And they used to do these things all over the US. Pyramid schemes were done every day. The reason they're not legal is the last guy who shows up gets burned, right? The last guy to the party is never going to make any money. Now, another expression you'll hear is, oh, it's a Ponzi scheme. Ponzi schemes are completely different as well. Here's what a Ponzi scheme is. Remember Bernie Madoff? Bernie Madoff had an investment firm and he brought in all of this money. In the first year, he was taking that money and he was betting on investments. He was betting on commodities and he was betting on all these things and he hit it out of the park. And he was able to deliver about, hey, kitty, he was able to deliver, 8, 10%, 15% on, pyramid schemes are illegal, Shannon Smith. You have to have a product in order to justify what you're selling. The product cannot be money. That's a felony. Absolutely. So Bernie Madoff in the second year, he wasn't successful. He was picking losers all over the place. And all of a sudden, he couldn't pay the 8% or 6% that he was promising everyone. But he was so successful in the first year that now tens of millions and hundreds of millions of new investment money was coming in. So when someone from the first batch of investors said, hey, I'm getting ready to buy a house, I want to pull all my money out, he didn't say, we don't have your money or you lost money. He used the last guy in, he used his money to pay the first guy. And it makes it look like you're successful, but you're using new investors to pay off early investors. That's a Ponzi scheme. And once again, what happens to the last guy who invests? Well, there's no money to take care of that guy, right? In order for a Ponzi scheme to keep working, you have to continually bring in all of this money. And it's always the promise of greed. Why do people do this? If somebody tells you can get 10% on your money and banks are paying 0.008, how do you not think this is too good to be true? Con men are called confidence men. Have you ever heard this? Right? A con man is a confidence man. They don't say that because they gain your confidence. They put their confidence in you. Most scams go something like this. A guy has a beautiful diamond ring. And he says, my wife and I just got a flat tire. We're looking for $300. I got to get this thing fixed. I can give you my wife's diamond ring to hold on to, right? If I don't come back in 20 minutes with the cash, the diamond ring is yours. I just need, so you're playing on the greed. The guy's thinking, I hope he doesn't come back, right? I hope this fool doesn't come back because I'm going to keep the diamond ring. Understand? So you're putting your confidence in the guy you're ripping off. Well, it's the same kind of a principle. When a guy thinks I can make 10% of my money, what we're doing is we're working on their greed. We're working on your greed. And this is the cult of greed. Why is this so important? Because it's not just MLM, right? There are so many industries that are driven by the cult of greed, including, no disrespect, our retirement funds, right? Our 401ks, what we invest in the stock market. All of these things are working on our greed, right? I'm not being disrespectful, but if you're getting ready to retire and you're getting 5% annually and you're not getting taxed on what you put into your retirement account, because we allow people to take tax-free stuff for their retirement. If somebody says to you, hey, I can get you 40% on your money instead of 10, first thing we think is, oh my God, if I'm putting $5,000 in a year on this thing and I'm getting 40%, and you start doing the money in your head, and we start spending that money before we even get it. You follow me? Before we get it, we're spending it in our heads. So as I did this MLM, I go over to this guy's house and I said, holy shit, bro, it's over. He goes, yeah, it's done. And I go, what now, man? Like, I thought this was going to make me a millionaire. I thought this was going to be the end of me ever having to work again. And he said, bro, you're good at this. This didn't work out well because it was a cool thing with surfing the internet and all that crap. You're good at this. People will listen to you. You are a natural at sales. And I go, yeah, but the thing I'm selling's gone. Like, you're not getting this. And he said to me, that's the 5th one I've done. And I felt like, honestly, I was so excited about this first project. I thought it was the coolest device in the world. The people we're meeting were all people that wanted to make their life better. And they talked about exciting stuff. And there were nice watches and cars. Like, I was hooked, not on the dream. I was hooked on this deal, right? That's what I thought was so cool. In fact, I used to say to other people, yeah, my understanding is there are other deals like this, right? This network and stuff, but they're selling soap or they're selling, this is a computer to surf the internet. Like, this is cool stuff. Before I left that house, there was a shift. There was a paradigm shift. I no longer cared about the product. And I don't just mean the one I had just lost. I didn't care about product, period. I watched this dude. I looked at this dude's house and I said to him, you made this much money? And he goes, no, no. He said, I had a group of 25,000 people. They call it a downline, right? But he had 25,000 people in his downline. And of that downline, he was selling them training manuals. He was selling them tapes on how to be a better network marketer. He was selling them techniques to make their business better. So I said, you didn't even get rich selling the product. He said, of course not. And like, I'm not kidding, like a jerk off. I said to him, is it really helping the downline? I mean, are they producing more? And he goes, man, I hope so, but who cares? And honestly, I remember being offended. Right? I really honestly remember being offended because I kept saying, hey, man, it was web TV, right? This was made by Sony, for F's sake. Well, Sony had one of the licenses on it and Philips Magnavox had the other, but it was called web television and you had a wireless keyboard. You could sit on the couch and surf the internet. It was so damn cool. Spanx Calhoun says, I remember playing with that box. Absolutely, you did. Spanky got one when he was probably 4 or 5. In fact, we had one in his room, one in the living room, one in the kitchen. Like, it was stupid as a while. I remember saying, like, you don't care if they're successful? And he said, look, bro, how many people do you think you enrolled in that last deal? And I went, 33, right? Like, I knew exactly how many people I had enrolled in that. And he said, since I started this, I've probably enrolled 3,000 or 4,000 people. And I remember just thinking to myself, because in the deal I had just done, I was making $450 on every person that I had enrolled, right? And the other thing is, people, I'll be honest, the crim thing was already in my head. I was larcenous, not toward people, but I was always looking for an angle. So when I realized how the pay plan worked, right? I told you if you signed up 20 people, right, you got this bonus. I did it. Then I bought a spot underneath it and did it again. Then I bought a spot underneath that and I did it again. And I bought a spot underneath that and I did it again. And I did it 5 levels deep. And here's what happened. I'm not joking. This is how bad this company thought this out. The entire investment was $795, right? If I bought this package, bought it myself for $795 on the bottom rung, because every single one of those top 6 spots had hit the pay period. I mean, the top of the pay plan, with all of my commissions, they were paying me $900. Yeah, they were paying me $900 for a $790 investment, which means literally I could give it away and make a fortune, which was the plan. The plan was to go on the road as public speakers and say, anybody that wants to try this, you're in for free. That was my plan, was to hustle this company. Sadly, before that had a chance to actually take place, they shut down. But I was already looking at pay plans and realizing how a network marketer could make more money than the company intended you to make. And that kind of got me segmented into a different group of people. And I started to meet individuals that were considerably better at this than other people. So I'm doing the next deal, and it was how to make money on the internet being a digital landlord, so to speak, right? And I think it was called Our Last OLE. It kind of had a concept. It was almost a predecessor to eBay kind of a thing, except everybody who was listing stuff was getting commissions off it. Like if eBay was owned by thousands of people instead of one person, that was the concept. Not a good idea. Really, it wasn't, but it sounded good. It was a good pitch. And I'm on stage and I'm doing this pitch, and I had about 800 people in the room. Now I had done that. I had run an ad and 10 people showed up for the ad. And I said to those 10 people, bring 2 people here next Friday, each of you. And I will not let anybody out of this room until they sign up. And that was my pitch. And everybody did. Some people brought 3 and 4 people. But the next thing you knew, I had about 800 people in the room. And I'm up doing one of these dog and pony shows and blah, blah, blah. And I look in the back of the room and there's a guy with his shirt up and he's going, and I'm like, what the hell? And the dude next to him is literally like making masturbation motions. And I'm like, what the F? Disrespectful. But the whole time they're doing this, like heckling and doing this stuff, I just kept doing my show. Like, and again, people, I'm doing dope. I'm not a good person at this point in my life. And I was thinking to myself, when I get off this stage, I'm killing these 2 guys in the back. Like, I don't find this funny, right? So as soon as the show was over, I'm walking towards the guy in the back, and one of them walked up. The man's name was Rex. And he came up and he goes, hey, how much are you making on this dog and pony show? And I said, hey, what's the deal with the disrespectful stuff? You want to step outside to talk about this? And he goes, yeah, absolutely. Come on. And like, he got a different idea of what I was talking about. But as we're leaving the board, like the convention room, right? The boardroom thing that you rent, their little convention halls and hotels. As I was leaving that room, we got out to the thing and he said to me, I want to tell you about a deal where you would do exactly what you're doing right now. You get up on stage, you do a presentation, whatever, except you'd work for me. And I still am believing in this MLM crap. Honestly, I am. So I said to him, nah, dude, the dream of this is that I don't have to work for anybody else, man. Everybody else has got to go to work for 40 hours a week. He goes, no, I want you to work 4 days a week for about 2 hours a day. And I was like, well, even still, he's like, and most of my guys are making about 35 grand a month. And I went, really? And he goes, yeah. He goes, you don't buy it. I said, I don't. And he took a roll out of his pocket, like something from the Mafia movie. I'm not kidding. I've never seen anyone else carry money like this other than him. But he had a fat circular wad of $100 bills with 2 rubber bands around it. And he proceeded to count out $5,000 and held it up and said, I want 15 minutes of your time. And if you don't want to work for me, you can keep the 5 grand. And I called my wife. I called Spanky's mom and said, hey, I just met a guy that's going to talk to me about a business proposal, and I'm not going to be home until it's over. And he said, all right. That was at about 7:00 at night. I stayed with he and Danny, who ended up being one of my best friends and a guy I spoke with for years. But I listened to the 2 of them until about midnight. And I continued to do network marketing stuff on the side, but I became a public speaker. And I was a public speaker that sold business opportunities. Now, make no mistake, now I'm being trained and I'm sitting down with cutthroat dudes who don't talk about the people in the audience as humans, right? We were cash extractors. That's what my boss used to say. We'd roll into a hotel and he'd go, the cash extractors are here. It was a very parasitic, and they were all into it. They were all into it. Now, we never broke the law, ever. We never lied to anybody, ever. We didn't. This may come as a shock to you, but the business model isn't that you lie to people. The business model is that you tell them the truth, but you make them feel like they're less than a man, less than a woman, less than a human if they are content to work for someone else. You keep beating and there's all the cliches. You know what a job stands for? Just over broke. They're paying you just enough money to keep you coming back. You're never going to get on your feet working with, right? For somebody else. If they're paying you $20 an hour, that's great. If they're paying you $50 an hour, what do you think you're making them? How do they justify paying you $50 an hour? Right? Well, she says, sounds like Wolf of Wall Street, says inappropriate heifer. It is exactly Wolf of Wall Street. And by the way, I have done exactly that hustle too. Anyone who gets into that line of work will sell penny stock. Everyone does it. Go get a Series 7 license and just start hammering people on telephones. It is sad. It is absolutely sad, right? But I got very professionally trained and I got very comfortable at standing up in front of people and talking to them. And here's the deal. This is the funniest thing ever, but this is when I got successful. I had said something in a show. I said, I was doing a pitch. You don't use the word pitch, right? You're doing a presentation. A presentation is enlightening people about something that you're talking about. A pitch is trying to get their money, right? It just doesn't sound nice. So my boss, Rex, came up to me and said, hey, man, listen to me. Stop saying the word pitch, right? You're hurting your numbers. And I went, oh, okay. And he said, then I want you to also don't tell people how long your performance is going to be. If you get up there and you tell them that you're going to be on stage for an hour and a half of the room goes, oh man, an hour and a half. I didn't think this was going to take I thought this was 30 minutes and they've already checked out. They're not listening to you. I went, okay. He said, and they can never know how much it's going to cost until the end. What keeps them from leaving is because they're just curious at how much this is going to cost, because we're going to make it sound so great. They just want to know how much it's going to cost. And it's always going to be $499 because you can't sell more than that. 500 is the cutoff. So everybody sells for $499. That's the most you can do for a business opportunity from the front of the room. And it's just to create a lead. Other people are going to call them and try to sell them much more, right? It's a whole industry. It really is. But this cutthroat. So don't say pitch. Don't say how long you're going to be on stage. Never tell them that there's an investment until the very end, right? So when he was done with this speech, I was sitting in the green room, and the whole time he's talking to me, I'm high on you know what, right? I had just finished banging dope, and I wasn't in the mood to hear it. I really wasn't. So I looked out from the curtain, and we had, I don't know, maybe 450 people, 550 people in the room. Not a big room. It wasn't 2,000. It was nothing like that. So I thought, you know, it's probably not going to be that great a pitch anyway. There's not a lot of people here. So I walked out and went, hey, how you doing? I'm Tommy. Well, I wasn't. I was Brett. But yeah, I'm Brett. And I said, so we'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm here, obviously, to show you guys a business opportunity. This pitch, right, is going to take me about 45 minutes to an hour and a half if I'm lucky, right? And if I'm lucky, at the end of it, I'm going to be hitting you up for about $490, right? I told them every single thing that I wasn't supposed to tell them. And I said, my boss told me not to call it a pitch. My boss told me not to tell you how long you were going to be out here. My boss told me not to tell you. And then I told them, I said, so this pitch is going to last about an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm going to hit you up for $400 at the end of it. And everybody laughed. And when that show was over, I had closed 18% of the room, which was the highest level that I had ever got to at that point. So that's what I did. I went the honesty route, which I know seems stupid, right? But I did the honesty route, right? So people would raise their hand and they would go, what percentage of people who buy this are successful? And I would say, oh God, I don't have any idea. Probably less than 0.5%, if I had to guess. And everybody would sort of look at each other and I'd go, but if you fail this, I want you to fail. Because we're going to make this so damn simple. We literally tell you every step you're supposed to do. If you don't follow that roadmap, I don't feel bad for you. We have a coach that will lay out an entire game. If you don't follow the game plan, you're going to fail. But what percentage of people who start anything succeed? Because 99% of everybody who tries anything fails. Sadly, that's the truth, especially when it comes to business. What percentage of businesses are around or have turned a profit at 3 years? Google that, it'll blow your mind. Yeah, honest larceny. Well, and the guy that was training, his name was Danny, and he was very devoutly LDS. He was a Mormon. And his justification was always, I don't lie to these people. And I said, yeah, but how do you justify ripping them off? He said, because the tax write-offs are 5 times more than they're going to invest in the business. If they don't take advantage of that, screw them. We made this so that you couldn't get hurt. And you begin to believe this crap. Like, you honestly begin to believe this crap. And I had a woman stand up in one of my shows and call me a lousy effing dream merchant and stamp out of the room, right? You're a dream merchant. And she stomped out of the room. But to give you an idea, you said like the Wolf of Wall Street. Jordan Belfort's a great example. There's nothing you can say to a public speaker who's speaking to you that he's not going to use to destroy you. Like, you call me a dream merchant. Are you kidding? It's the greatest clothes I ever had. Dream merchant? Damn right, that's what I am. I'm a dream merchant. I sell people dreams. Is that bad? Well, most people give up on their dreams when they're 18, right? Sir, point to somebody in the front row. What do you do? I'm an accountant. Really? So when you were 8 in 2nd grade or 3rd grade and they said, what do you want to be when you grew up? You said an accountant? I don't think so. I don't think so. You probably wanted to be an actor. You wanted to be an astronaut, but you're an accountant. And most people give up on dreams in increments. And by the time they're in their 30s, they don't have a dream left. And you know what? I do believe that. I do believe that. It's just that we weren't providing that. We were selling dreams, but we weren't selling anything of substance to go with it. Now, I will say this. I was speaking in Minnesota, and I'm on stage and I'm talking and I'm doing the pitch, and it was about you were buying up huge blocks of internet, right? Storage space. And we could do it for pennies because nobody used any of it. Like, you would go out and say, I'm giving you enough storage where you could have, 500 websites, 2,000 websites, and we're only charging this much money. So after I was done speaking, I'm sitting in a restaurant in a different hotel. I'm eating alone, and a guy walks right up and sits down, and I went, can I help you? And he goes, hey, I just saw your show. And I said, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm not even in the hotel that I did the show in. I leave because I don't want to do this. My job is not to do this. And he goes, man, I got 2 questions. He's like, and I'll pay for your lunch. And I was like, knock yourself out. He goes, are you really giving us that much space, or is it a lie? And I go, no, you're absolutely getting that much space. And he's like, how can you do that? I said, because none of you are going to use it, right? None of you are going to do anything with it. So we can sell you these unbelievable amounts of everything because you're not going to use it. And he said, would you double it? Could you give me double that much storage if I paid a little bit extra? I said, absolutely. This cat, I'm not joking, and I don't want to out the company or the dude, but he built a company that you've heard of. And he used our pitch to do it. He sold it for $470 million. And we used him in the next infomercial, right? Nobody was more successful. But when I sat down and talked to him afterwards, he said, oh, I knew you were a scam. I knew it was a scam, but it worked. I needed that much space. And to get it through you guys as a scam cost me 1/10 of what it would have cost me to buy it from somebody legit. So were there people who bought our program and got rich? Yeah. There were guys who got hella rich. There was a really overweight guy that we used to call the skipper because he looked exactly like the skipper from Gilligan's Island. And he had a terrible alcohol abuse disorder. He used to start drinking at 7 a.m. We filmed him for infomercials, but couldn't use him because he slurred so bad you couldn't understand what he was saying. But we sold some deal where you could buy closeouts of things that failed. This guy bought Foster Grant sunglasses that people didn't want. And he was getting, I think, a dozen Foster Grant sunglasses for $0.05. But he was buying all of these, and he sold them to the Nicaraguan army. And overnight, the guy was a multimillionaire. And, so there were people who got successful, but they were few and far in between. The vast majority of people got ripped off, and they didn't get ripped off once. They got ripped off every time the cash extractors came back to town. Because what they look at the infomercial and they see that these people are successful, maybe I bought the wrong program. You see, it's not one pitch. When you get there, the best speaker goes on first. It's called first hole. And the guy that speaks first hole goes and gets as much money out as he possibly can. The guy that speaks second takes a little bit more. Maybe the first person didn't like the idea of real estate, but the second pitch has to do with internet. So believe it or not, they show you 3 different business opportunities, and many times someone will buy all 3. And we know as we're selling it to them, even if you were being legit, there's no way you could work all 3 programs, right? You really do pay to have a coach help you. Whether the coach is going to be working it, but we don't care. What we want is a commission, right? And the commission works out to be about $80 for every person you sell from the front of the room. That's what you get. $80 of that is yours. So when you've got a room of 2,000 people in it, right? 80, if you got a good night, it doesn't take a lot of those to make a ton of money. But the lifestyle sucked. It's like a rock star that's not cool. You're an uncool rock star. You live on the road. You live out of hotels. You live out of tour buses, believe it or not. Either tour, but like when we do California, instead of flying, you just rent the tour bus and you drive up California with road crew and speakers. But the whole thing, you're just, it's like you're living in hotels. I've told Quibble this story, but I did this until you would get, we nickname it road rash. You've been on the road so long, you hate everybody and everything. But I would wake up in the morning and pick up the phone and I'd call the front desk, and you'd hear Hilton. Hey, this is going to sound stupid. Can you tell me the state and city I'm in? And because you're every town is the same thing. And I didn't book the travel. All I had to do was show up at the airport and show them my ID, and my tickets would be waiting there. Half of the time, I didn't even know where I was flying. And, we're all doing drugs. We're wasted. So we're literally, you're living in hotels. You're eating at restaurants. It's like a rock star. That's not cool. And you got to go on stage for 2 hours. And if you didn't have drugs, it was an uncool rock star. It really was, but it was a god awful lifestyle. That's right, Franklin. It just becomes a blur. If my life depended on it, I could not tell you how many different deals I've pitched. There's no way to even hazard a guess. Most of our pitches would last about 90 days, and then we would switch them out to a new one. Even if they were great, they wouldn't make it more than 6 months, because by 6 months, the people that are buying in are complaining. And that amount of complaining starts to bring enough heat where you go out of business, shut it down, file Chapter 11, spin out a new deal. And the company that's going on the road, we don't own any of this crap. They hire us to sell their stuff. So what we're doing, I'm not doing anything wrong. The guy that put it together, and this is how you justify what you're doing. And you think to yourself, in the beginning, you've seen movies like this. You've seen Boiler Room. In the beginning, it's like, holy crap, 30 grand a month? I didn't make 30 grand last year. So you're buying more drugs and you're buying, gold and you're nicer cars. You're just acting like an asshat, right? However, it's a lifestyle that you cannot possibly keep up. Do you understand what I'm saying? It really is pretty disgusting. And I'll tell you something. Somebody said in an earlier comment, you once danced, you robbed banks. It feels like you've had a million lifestyles. The thread that went through all of them was the cult of greed. Do you understand? What dragged me into every single thing that I did was the cult of greed. Taking your clothing off for money, right, isn't your first choice as a human being. I promise. But what happens is you need easy money. You spend 4 hours a day sitting in parking lots waiting on dope, right? So you can't have a 9 to 5, but you got to come up with $600 or $700 a day. Yes, we are live, Abdrosti. You have to come up with $600 or $700 a day. So dancing, taking your clothing off for cash seems like an easy choice, right? This is easy money. I don't have to work for it. I'm not doing 8 hours a day. All of these things tended to be compromising who you are and what you believe pays good. Right? You have to pay someone to do something that is against our normal conscience. Taking off clothing for money tends to be against normal conscience. Most people aren't built that way. I have nothing against anyone who is built that way. But I assure you, there's a reason that one of the recurring dreams that all people seem to have is that they're on stage naked, because it's the biggest fear and it shows you vulnerable, right? Most people don't want to be seen like that. So you'll do it because the money's insane. Most people don't want to rip people off, getting up on stage. And when I'm there and I'm in the middle of it and all that money's coming in and you're high-fiving and you're buying Rolexes, that's all fun. But the day comes in everybody's life where, as a speaker, where you look down and there's somebody taking a kid's hand to walk to the back table, to spend $499. The person couldn't afford a babysitter, right? Thank you, Abrusti. Thank you. That's a very kind thing to say. Seeing you makes me stay sober. I love that. But I think you're doing the heavy lifting. I will absolutely take the compliment. But if you're staying sober, my friend, you're doing the heavy lifting. But you look down and you see a woman walking her kid to the back. Let me tell you something. People say, you've turned out to be a really good guy. And I think I have. My brother, Johnny Scoville, was always a really good guy. Honestly, he got on the dope. He did all the same things I did, but he was different. I was working in a telemarketing office with Johnny, and there was a guy on the phone. I'll never forget this. It was right at the end of the week, and we were in the month of December. It was the end of November. We were going into the month of December. And at the end of the month, they take all of your volume and they add it up, and that determines what the whole bonus check's going to be. So everybody stays as late as they can. They're calling everybody that's got a deal half hanging. You're trying to get all that money in at once. And I'm listening to Johnny pitch somebody on a telephone. And the person said, I had $11,000 that's saved up. He said, I only planned on taking about 8 of it for Christmas so I could give my family a decent Christmas. He said, but I'm going to invest this $8,000 into this business because I think that that's to provide for my family more upfront, right? That's really going to, they saw this as their mission. And Johnny went, nope, you're sure not. And I was sitting right next to him, right? He was on a speaker thing. We used to call it feature 802. Technically, it's that I can hear it coming out of a speaker on the ceiling. The guy doesn't know he's on speakerphone. But whenever one of us would walk into the other one's office, we'd hit it so that they could hear where we were in the pitch. Gives you an idea how much longer they got to go or whatever. And he was just closing the guy. And the guy was saying to him, I got a Visa card. I can put this on right now. And Johnny went, nope, you're not. Give your family a Christmas. And the guy said, no, you don't understand. And Johnny said, you don't understand. This isn't going to go away. In 3 or 4 months, 5 months, the next infomercial will be coming up. Your family and your Christmas is more important. Trust me, you'd thank me on this. And the guy was pissed. I wasn't that person. I'm sorry, I wasn't. I was pretty cutthroat right to the end. And this is the reason that all of the other things that happened to me in my life, these are the reasons that I was so off in the weeds on dope, the reason that I was the most promiscuous dude on planet Earth, right? And I didn't call a lot of people back. I validated my life by the fact that if somebody was willing to get into bed with me, I couldn't be a complete scumbag, right? I mean, this person met me 6 hours ago and is ready to have sex with me. I got to be all right. I got to be half decent. I know this sounds stupid, but this is literally how I was living. This is the thought processes that were keeping me sane. It's bizarre. It's bizarre to look back on it. But when I got sober, and this, if you're brand new to sobriety, let me give you a quick warning, right? Let me give you a quick warning. If you've been a dirtbag for 46 years, when you get sober, you're going to have to address the fact that you've been a dirtbag for 46 years, right? If you saw the last show that I just did, and we were talking about what we've been talking about recently, and we talked about how somebody could show up at a party or show up at a event where a bunch of women are naked and having sex with men for cash and just be there and be amongst it and be a part of it. I could not step foot into a room where a business opportunity show was going on. I'd probably vomit. I'm not being funny. The guilt. I remember sitting down one day and going, all right, so you start thinking the number of times you went on stage. You start multiplying that by the number of years. And you get to a point where you're like, there were tens of thousands of people I stole from. Tens of thousands of people who I stole from. And that overwhelming, that feeling at 46 where you go, oh my God, right? There's not a lot of good. There's not a lot of good in me. And I'm not looking for any of you to defend me, because the person who's talking to you right now, it's not the same person I'm talking about. I'm literally not. Tommy Scoville has never done any of these things. You feel me? I've never done any of these things. The previous me, most assuredly did. Right. And I remember really going through this. Like, I was really going through this. And all of a sudden, the Q said to me, well, then throw it out, right? If that's who you are, if that's the person you've been, and if you're struggling that hard with who you are, then stop friggin' being that person. And I mean, this seems so stupid to me, because in my head, no, you're born this way, man. Like, this is who you are, right? I came out of the womb a greedy little shit. And he said, no, man. And by the way, I believed it. I wasn't saying that for his benefit. I believed that came out of the womb a greedy person that just was different. For me, it was just different. I didn't want to work hard, but I wanted money. So I wasn't going to help people. I just wanted the easiest money I could get. And if that meant taking my clothing off for money, that's cool. And if it meant sleeping with somebody that I didn't want to sleep with for cash or whatever, I was willing to take any shortcut that I could in order to bring money in so that I could support my habit. Plain and simple. And then a funny thing happened, and I began to take a pencil and take pieces of paper, and I began to write stuff down. And I realized that, you know what? I wasn't born that cat. When I was a kid and they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I didn't tell them that I wanted to be somebody that stole from people. Right? So when I had started to get to a point where in my life where the desperation was coming in, I don't feel guilty for robbing banks. Not in the way that I did for the shows, the stuff that I did to rip people off. Now, full disclosure, people, I evolved, right? I went from public speaker to, I then, like everything I've done in my life, I went to my boss, I targeted his stuff, and I said, hey, man, I got an idea. And this isn't anything that makes me proud, I assure you. But the challenge was this. How do you put together an infomercial with testimonials from people who were successful, who saw your infomercial? What came first, the chicken or the egg? You have to have a testimonial in order to make an infomercial. But the only way to get a testimonial is for someone to have seen the infomercial and bought the product. So it's a very, very difficult thing. And you're going to have to show receipts to the Federal Trade Commission. You're going to have to show receipts to the SEC, right? All of these different things to prove that everything those people are saying in the infomercials, they're not lying about any of that. The guy says, I made $25,000 in 2 weeks. He did. He had to prove that, had to show tax returns, all that. It's not fake. It's not. We were sitting there one day and I said, we got all of these people that have seen our business opportunity shows in hotels. He goes, yeah, but those aren't infomercial people. We did them mailers. We used to mail to people's houses. He goes, we can't use any of those people. I'm like, the guy that sold his business for $470 million, we can't make a testimonial out of? He said, no, because he didn't buy our system to do that. He used his own techniques. So I came up with a phrase, using techniques found within the system. Using techniques found within the system, I was able to make $25,000 in a month. It's a really small change, right? You may not even notice it, right? Using techniques I found in the system, using techniques found within the system. What that meant is I could take this successful person, pull him in, and build an infomercial around them. Bring in this guy, whatever he was doing to be successful, bring in all of his stuff. Now, that little change of verbiage allowed us to crank these puppies out like this. So I said, I've got an idea for it. I storyboarded it. I laid it all out. I said, here it is. I made $500,000 on that infomercial and a wristwatch. And every single bit of it went in my arm, right? Every single bit of it went in my arm. Or the arms of the people that I loved, because there were a lot of people surrounding me at that point who were also addicted to drugs. But I'm pumping this stuff in as fast as I can get it. Now, this is the faith I had in myself. Because as we were starting, my boss said to me, 5% of what we do as a company, or $500,000 guaranteed cash. It's up to you. I said, I'll take the $500,000 guaranteed cash. Thank you. And then we did $56 million in sales in 14 months. I don't want to talk about how fantastic a decision I made. And I was so bummed out visibly about it that they bought me a Cartier Pasha chronograph in 18 karat gold. Lovely wristwatch. It wasn't 5% of $56 million. Yeah, Shannon Smith says, brilliant way to manipulate. And it really is. Not something I'm particularly proud of. But it was a brilliant way to manipulate the system. And that is the kind of thing that I was doing. Is that a positive thing? Seventh son, I'm a scumbag. And if you don't know that by this time, holy hell. And if you think I'm bragging, then you're an asshat. No, it's not a positive thing. It sure as shit was at that time in my life. But I think that the general tenor of what I'm talking about here is that I'm not particularly proud of any of these things. I'm really not. It's amazing how you can make yourself believe that what you're doing makes you successful, right? I'm sure it's how prostitutes are able to go to bed at night, right? Because I'm taking care of myself. I'm earning enough money to be able to support my habits so that I'm not literally stealing, right? I'm not kicking people's doors in. It's a hell of a lot more honest. Honest to God, it's a hell of a lot more honest to kick someone's door in. But it was an ugly thing. It was an awful thing. And the reason and the purpose of me talking about it today, I assure you, is not to brag. The purpose of why I'm talking about these things is because control groups are going to control you in only a couple of ways. And one of the biggest of them is greed. And if you begin to realize the motivating factor behind greed, you have no idea the number of control groups in your life that are based on greed and greed alone, right? And people go, I've never been involved in anything like that. You've bumped your head. I don't do anything like that. And I never would. I'm not that guy. So what do you do with your cash, right? You're not buying drugs. You're not doing anything. Well, I trade cryptocurrency. Okay. It's not a cult, not by any stretch of the imagination. But are you spending 9 hours a day reading about crypto? Every single person you talk to is only, right? You can get very involved because greed has a way of pulling people into things and making them do stuff that they normally wouldn't do. Right? Once again, the people who are able to say, give me $150, and for the next hour, I'll pretend I love you. I'll let you do anything you want to my body. I have met people who do that for a living. This is my personal experience. That's it. I'm not saying there aren't sex workers out there that are living a completely different life, but the only thing I can talk to you about is my personal experience. And in my personal experience, they didn't do that to drive a Ferrari. They were not selling themselves to live a good life and take care of their kids. They were selling themselves to support drug habits. They were selling themselves. And the crazy thing is, it's a real symbiotic thing, because there's no chance in hell that you're going to be able to feel good about yourself without a handful of whatever, right? Something that takes away the pain of what you do. You feel me? Taking 500,000 saved your life. 5% to 56 million is $2,800,000. It most assuredly is. That's pretty close to. And I'll tell you something. The next deal that I did with those boys, I didn't take the 500 grand. I took the back end, and in the back end in that one, we did more than 2.8. I got that money. I blew it all within about 900 days. You would not believe the speed at which you can go through a couple $1 million, right? Or $3 million. You would not believe the speed that you can go through one if all you do is feed your drug habit, right? Because you don't make good decisions. You don't do anything. You eat out for every meal. You're not going to buy groceries. It's just an awful lifestyle. It really is. It is an awful lifestyle. I overspent on an education habit. I'm not kidding. Student loans forever. Education finance is a scam. And Don Meredith, don't take this the wrong way, but for a lot of people take out those massive loans because they very much want to be a teacher, right? And they feel like they want to help kids. And there are industries that people are very passionate about. But for a lot of people, we take out those loans. If you look at the 80s, right? The greed era. The era of greed is the 80s, they call it. The number of people who ended up lawyers after that, they weren't lawyers because they wanted the high ideals of the Supreme Court. No, it was great money. And it was sexy. They were making movies about it. We go in waves in this country. What kind of careers that people get into, but it always comes back to what? You think doctors, honestly, do you think doctors, most of them go to school for 28 years because they want to help people? If that's what you believe, God bless you. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who believe that. But it's really funny how we start to switch how we do our billing. And now we're bringing doctors in from other countries to the US because we don't have enough doctors, literally, to fill the jobs anymore. Because when the money starts getting threatened, there are other things really intelligent people can do. And when they start realizing that it's maybe kind of a hump payout, it doesn't pay the way it used to, and there's a lot of government paperwork you got to fill out and all that. We bring a lot of them in from India. We bring a lot of them in from all over the world, but there are not enough doctors in the US. We've never had that problem before. We haven't. So I realize that people go into some careers for different reasons, but let's be really honest. We think about the money involved in it. I mean, by the way, I don't believe money is the root of all evil, not by any friggin' stretch of the imagination. And by the way, it doesn't say that in the Bible either. Believe it, it doesn't. It says the love of money, right? The love of money is the root of all evil. Money is just paper, stuff you can buy stuff with. There are people who have money who give it away, do beautiful things with it. There are people who have money and they build burn centers for kids and they build, right? You can do amazing things with money. Money's not a bad thing. It's a tool like anything else. And it can turn you into a rip-roaring asshole overnight. Did me more than once, right? More than once. I had to short circuit myself. I didn't know how to be successful. So if you gave me $1 million, I had to go through it as fast as I could because success didn't feel good to me. It felt awful, right? My brain would go to the default setting, which was failure. I had been the biggest of all failures of all time. I was very comfortable being a failure. My brain was accustomed to it, right? My brain was absolutely accustomed to it. What I'm not accustomed to is being successful. So as you start to have to deal with success, very often that means that it required dope for me to feel comfortable in my own skin. And that may sound really stupid to a lot of people, but most addicts who have got a lot of time in sobriety will tell you that more likely than not, they're in a lot more danger when they're successful than when they're failing. See, when we're failing, I failed as an addict. If I'm failing as in life, it's not really that much of a shocker. But when things start going good and people start telling you you're a great guy and that you're doing wonderful and all those things, you got 46 years of being told the exact opposite. What happens is you start to feel uncomfortable. And when I start to feel uncomfortable, I stick a needle in my arm and everything goes great. So I was always in serious danger if I was becoming successful. And by the way, greed is one of the 7 sins. Absolutely is. But on the same side, there's a reason that that up until just recently, because of the drug overdoses, that every single couple of years, our life expectancy would get longer, right? Greed for more life, greed for better life, greed for a better, a better situation for your family. I don't have a problem with any of those things. I don't. I think that the desire to make oneself better very often gets called greed. If you make $100,000 a year and you decide you want to make $250,000, it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't. If the desire to make double that money, you say, I will step on anybody I have to in order to make that happen, there's when the greed starts to become an issue, right? There's when, but I want her to have the best life that she could possibly have, right? I want my son to have the best life he can possibly have. I want to live the best life I possibly can. I will never apologize for any of that. Right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I do not think there's anything wrong with cash, but the love of it and the desire for it and the if it is your drug, if it is all you think about, right? I used to say to people all the time, what's the last thing you think about before you go to bed and the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning? Because it usually will tell you where you live. It'll usually tell you what your life is about. And for 46 years, my first thought every single morning was about money, not because I loved it, but because if I didn't have it, I couldn't get heroin. And that was my life. So, by the way, I've done a ton of disgusting stuff. This is only touching the surface. However, there's a bunch of you that don't know me anymore. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but in the very beginning, I talked ad nauseum and I covered all of this stuff. But if you're just coming out of the lifeboat, then you're not going back and watching 2,000 videos. So the next time we come on, I'm going to show you some of my infomercials, which in a couple of different instances, I actually was a testimonial in my own infomercials using techniques found within my system, right? Because I was making a lot of money, it made sense to use me in the as testimonials. So I can show you some of the stuff that we did, and I will be touching on this regularly. But if you watch the show that I just did with Quibs, you realize that when they invite people into that particular organization, they say, you've got to be making this much money because you're going to have to be able to pay for all the extracurricular activities. And you're going to have to be able to pay for all of these things. And you're going to have to be able to pay for all of this. You get it? So the greed, the cult of greed continues to come back. Money is the root of all evil. But the baker, the banker, and the preacher and I don't think it will go out of style. Lily, well played. I believe that we are really good at sabotaging ourselves. Things are going well and we do something stupid. Things are going poorly, we do something stupid. It's a pattern that's hard to break. Yeah, and there's a lot of truth to that. And the reason is because, again, your brain wants very little effort. Your brain doesn't want to work hard. Your brain doesn't want to be putting out a bunch of energy. It wants to go to what it knows. This is crazy, but people stay in abusive relationships because the fear of what's outside of that is worse than the abuse. The abuse we understand. The fear of the unknown we don't understand. Success is the same way for somebody who's an addict. I understand being a junkie. I understand what it means to get up in the morning and need a fix. At 46, having to get up in the morning and not need a fix meant I didn't understand anything on planet Earth. Everything I had done up to that point in my life was to get the fix. That was it. Whether I was dancing, whether I was speaking, whatever I was doing, it was easy money. Drug smuggling, selling guns illegally. It was always to get easy money. Because there aren't too many 40-hour-a-week jobs out there that are going to give you $700 a day to cover your dope habit. And then you can go on from there, right? Because that's what I need so $5,000 a week to keep me well. And then I need to make enough money to be doing other kind of stuff, right? Not an easy thing to do. The name of the show before this is called Cults and Crims Were Funny. Cult and Crims Were Funny. It's over there with me and Reese. Quibble. And yeah, it's a fun program. If you haven't seen it, you should stop over there and give it a look-see. People, I'm gonna be popping in and talking about this one on and off. I will not continue to do one show after another about it, but I wanted to let you know we are gonna do a series because last night was kind of impromptu, but I am going to be talking about this. Do you think some YouTube creators can fall into that category? Absolutely, F. Absolutely. And you know what? You know who they are. Honest to God, you do. Right? There are people you see on YouTube who will happily sell out friends, family, or anything for the purpose of getting views. Right? Remember when I stopped doing Danny Masterson content or saying his name? One of the reasons that I stopped is because it started to feel like the only reason that I brought that dude's name up is because it was going to get me a crap load of views and a paycheck. If I'm here and what I'm talking about is actually germane to what the hell we're going with, then I'm cool with that. But if I start becoming that guy that doesn't care about the product anymore because I just need to make money, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be a person that does this. Right? One of the reasons that I walked away from that story, and I walked away from that story when we were doing about 35 to 50,000 views every time I brought it up. But it didn't sound like we were even telling the truth anymore. It sounded like we were coming up with these incredible friggin', stories. He got jumped on the way to the chow hall while two cops were walking him. People, nobody attacks anybody with two cops there, not in prison, right? You get anywhere near a cop with an attack and the whole prison shut down for months. The guy that did it will end up dead. Because people don't want business to stop, drugs to getting traded. So all the stories that were coming out, I was like, you know what this feels like? It doesn't feel real. It feels disingenuous. It feels like I'm doing this just to be salacious. I feel like the story's over and now I'm creating those stories because, hey, look at how many views it's getting me. I don't want to be that person. May not believe that, but I really don't want to be that person. So yeah, I think I've seen it, and I'm not bad mouthing anybody else. Right? They may not ever have a problem to fall back into, but I could. I promise you, I could become a scumbag easily again, people. I did it before. I could do it again. Brazy, great to see you. As much as everybody says, you've really changed. Yeah, all I'd have to do to change back is add heroin. I promise. Take about a week. No, it would take about a week. I don't think you get, the power of addiction is absolutely friggin' incredible. And if you were to add just, the instant asshole, just add beer. You've heard that one, right? Well, instant convict, just add heroin. I will continue to do it until I break out in handcuffs. And I won't care who I hurt along the way. That's always been the way it is. And now, people, I just got a page that said, hey, have you seen Jake? You don't know what that means? You should catch our last show over on Cults and Crims. I'm Tommy. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye, babe. See ya.